Poor girl saves businesswoman from dangerous situation and gains a new life. Rebecca Thompson was driving hurriedly along the road by the Los Angeles River in Los Angeles when she lost control of her car on a curve slick from the afternoon rain. The vehicle flipped and plunged into the river, with her trapped inside. The icy water rushed in quickly through the shattered windshield. Rebecca fought desperately to get out, but the seatbelt had jammed and her hands trembled too much to unbuckle it. That's when she felt strong arms pulling her from the submerged car. A girl of about 12, wearing torn clothes and barefoot, had jumped into the water without hesitation. "Calm down, Mom! I'll get you out!" the girl shouted, swimming hard toward the shore. Rebecca was in shock, coughing up water and shivering from the cold. When she caught her breath on the muddy bank, she looked for the girl to thank her, but she had vanished into the bushes. "Wait," Rebecca called. "What's your name?" Only the sound of distant traffic answered. The businesswoman stood there, wet and bewildered, trying to process what had happened. A child who didn't even know her had risked her own life to save her. In the days that followed, Rebecca couldn't get the girl's face out of her mind. There was something in the determination of those brown eyes that had deeply moved her. She began visiting the area of the accident, hoping to see her again. It was on a Friday afternoon that she spotted her. The girl was at the traffic light on Riverside Drive selling water bottles to drivers. Rebecca stopped her car as soon as the light turned red. "Hi," she called through the window. "Are you the girl who saved me from the river?" The girl eyed her suspiciously, not answering. Her clothes were even dirtier than on the day of the accident, and she carried a plastic bag full of bottles. "How many waters do you have there?" Rebecca asked. "I'll buy them all." "Why?" The girl frowned. "You can't drink all that." "I want to help you. You saved my life." The girl took a step back. "I don't need help." And it was no big deal. The light changed, and Rebecca had to drive on, but not before leaving $50 in the girl's hand, money she tried to refuse. All through the next week, Rebecca returned to the same traffic light at the same time. The girl was always there, but each day she grew more wary of Rebecca's attempts to connect. "What's your name?" Rebecca asked one afternoon. "Zoe," the girl replied, glancing around as if looking for an escape. "Zoe, I'm Rebecca. Where do you live? Why do you want to know?" "Because I care about you. A girl your age shouldn't be working on the street." Zoe laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "You don't know anything about me or my life." "Then tell me, where are your parents?" Zoe's face closed off completely. "I don't have parents and I don't have time to talk. I need to sell these waters." Rebecca bought 2 bottles and watched Zoe walk away. There was a deep sadness in those young eyes that left her heartbroken. The next night, Rebecca decided to follow Zoe discreetly. She wanted to know where the girl lived and if she was safe. She saw Zoe stash her empty bag in a bush near Riverside Drive and walk down a trail leading to a homeless encampment. Zoe stopped in front of a shack made of scrap wood and plastic tarp. There was no electricity, just a candle she lit inside the flimsy structure. Rebecca's heart ached. How could a child live alone in such terrible conditions? The next day, she returned to the traffic light with a different offer. "Zoe, I have a big, empty house. You could live with me." "No," the girl answered instantly. "Why not? You'd have your own room, food on the table. You could go to school." "Because I don't trust adults," Zoe interrupted. "They all lie." "I won't lie to you." Zoe looked into Rebecca's eyes for a long moment. "Every adult says that. My grandma was the only person I trusted, and she's gone." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, continuing. "Your grandmother passed away?" Rebecca asked carefully. "She died 2 years ago. Since then, I've been on my own." "Is there no one else in your family?" Zoe fidgeted with her bag of water bottles, avoiding Rebecca's gaze. "There was, but it's complicated." Rebecca sensed she shouldn't push further. The traffic light turned green, and she drove on, but her mind buzzed with questions. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the courage Zoe had shown in saving her and the strength it took for a child to survive alone on the streets of Los Angeles. Over the next few days, Rebecca changed her approach. Instead of offering help directly, she started buying water from Zoe every day and chatting about everyday things, the weather, the traffic, small daily matters. Gradually, Zoe began opening up a little more. She shared how she woke up early each day to get water from the park fountain, how well she knew the neighborhood streets, and exactly which traffic lights had the most generous drivers. "How did you learn to swim so well?" Rebecca asked one afternoon. "My grandma taught me. She said it was important to know how to swim because life sometimes throws you into deep water." The answer brought tears to Rebecca's eyes. There was wisdom in those words, far beyond Zoe's years. "Your grandmother sounds like she was a very special person." Zoe's face lit up for the first time. "She was, the best person in the world. She always took care of me when they couldn't." "What happened to your parents?" "My dad left when I was little. My mum, she had problems and couldn't take care of me properly. My grandma raised me." Rebecca sensed the pain behind Zoe's words. The girl spoke matter-of-factly, as if telling someone else's story, but her eyes betrayed deep hurt. "And after your grandmother passed? Neighbors took me to a place with other kids, but I ran away. I don't like staying where I'm not really wanted." "How do you know they didn't want you?" Zoe shrugged. "You can always tell. People look at you with pity, but deep down they think you're just another problem." Zoe's words cut Rebecca's heart. She realized the girl had built an emotional armor to protect herself. "I don't think you're a problem," Rebecca said softly. "You don't really know me yet," Zoe replied with a sad smile. That night, Rebecca had an idea. Instead of insisting Zoe accept help, she decided to show it through actions. The next day, she arrived at the traffic light with an extra lunch. "I brought an extra sandwich. Want it?" Zoe hesitated, but her hunger won out. She took the sandwich and ate eagerly. "It was delicious," she said, wiping her hands on her clothes. "I'll bring another tomorrow," Rebecca promised. And so, a routine began. Every day, Rebecca showed up with something. Sometimes food, sometimes a jacket, sometimes just friendly conversation. Zoe still kept her guard up, but Rebecca noticed she started looking forward to these moments. The girl visibly brightened when she saw Rebecca's car approaching. One afternoon, Zoe was more talkative than usual. "You know, my grandma used to make the most delicious chocolate cake. It was my favorite." "What was she like?" Rebecca asked. "She was tiny, but really strong. She had gray hair always tied in a bun and wore a floral apron. She worked a lot, but always made time for me." "What did she do for work?" Zoe stayed silent for a moment. "She took care of a wealthy family's home. She was there all day, sometimes even late at night when they had parties." "And you were alone?" "No. Sometimes she took me with her. I played in the backyard while she worked. The house was huge, even had a pool." Rebecca felt a strange shiver. Something about that description felt familiar. "Do you remember the family's name?" Zoe shook her head. "My grandmother never talked much about her work at the house. She said some things were better left unspoken." The traffic light turned green, and Rebecca drove on, but that conversation kept echoing in her mind. There was something there she couldn't place, a strange feeling that this wasn't just any coincidence. That night, Rebecca went through her personal files, trying to recall the people who had worked in her home over the years. Her family had always had housekeepers, but she'd never paid much attention to the details of their personal lives. Then she remembered Ms. Dorothy, a small dedicated woman who had worked for the Thompson family for over 15 years. Rebecca vaguely recalled Ms. Dorothy mentioning a granddaughter she was raising alone. Rebecca's heart raced. Could Zoe be Ms. Dorothy's granddaughter? She tried to remember more details, but her memory was hazy. Back then, Rebecca had been focused on her career and was rarely home during the day. Her interactions with Ms. Dorothy had been minimal. The next day, Rebecca could barely focus at work. She was anxious to see Zoe again and learn more about her grandmother. When she reached the traffic light, Zoe wasn't there. Rebecca waited for an hour, but the girl never showed. A sense of panic began to take over. What if something had happened to Zoe? What if someone had taken her? The area was dangerous, especially for a child alone. Rebecca decided to go to the shack where Zoe lived. She followed the path she'd taken the first time and found the place empty. There were no signs anyone had been there recently. She asked a few people at the homeless encampment if they'd seen Zoe, but no one had any solid information. Some said the girl disappeared now and then for a few days. "She's a bit wary," an elderly woman explained. "When she senses trouble, she vanishes for a while." Rebecca spent 3 days searching for Zoe. She checked other traffic lights in the area, talked to street vendors, even put up flyers with the photo she'd discreetly taken of the girl. On Thursday, she finally found her. Zoe was at a traffic light miles from her usual spot, selling candy instead of water. "Zoe!" Rebecca called out, relieved. "Where were you? I was worried." The girl looked at her in surprise. "You were looking for me?" "Of course. I thought something terrible had happened to you." Zoe seemed genuinely touched by Rebecca's concern. "I just needed to leave for a few days. Sometimes it's better to move around." "Why?" "Because when people start caring too much about me, trouble usually follows." Rebecca realized her persistence had scared Zoe. "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable. That wasn't my intention." "It's not that. It's just, I've learned not to trust when someone cares too much. There's always something behind it." "And what do you think I want from you?" Zoe looked her straight in the eye. "I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out." Rebecca felt she needed to be more open with Zoe. "You know what I want? I want to repay what you did for me. You saved my life without knowing me, without expecting anything in return. That really moved me. Anyone would have done the same." "No, Zoe, they wouldn't. Most people would have stopped to look, maybe called the fire department, but they wouldn't have jumped into the water like you did." Zoe lowered her eyes, embarrassed. "My grandmother always said we should help when we can. She did that for everyone." "Tell me more about her." "What was her name?" "Dorothy, but everyone called her Miss Dorothy." Rebecca's heart stopped for a second. It was exactly the name of her family's former housekeeper. "Dorothy what? What was her last name?" "Williams. Dorothy Williams." Rebecca felt the world spin. It was her. Zoe was the granddaughter of Miss Dorothy, who had worked in her home. "Zoe," Rebecca said, her voice trembling, "did your grandmother work for the Thompson family?" The girl looked up, surprised. "How do you know that?" "Because I'm Rebecca Thompson. Miss Dorothy worked in my house for many years." Zoe's face completely changed. Surprise turned to anger, then suspicion. "You're one of the Thompsons?" she asked coldly. "Yes, but—" "I don't believe this." Zoe took a step back. "All this time you knew who I was." "No, Zoe. I only found out yesterday when you said your grandmother's name. I swear I didn't know." "Liar. You knew I was Miss Dorothy's granddaughter and came looking for me, but forget it. I don't want anything from your family." Zoe started walking away quickly. "Zoe, wait, let me explain. I don't want to hear it. My grandmother suffered because of your family. She cried in secret, but I saw it. You humiliated her." "What are you talking about?" Rebecca shouted, running after her. "You threw my grandmother out of your house, called her a thief, an honest woman who worked for you for so many years." Zoe disappeared into the crowd on the sidewalk, leaving Rebecca standing in the middle of the street, completely shocked. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Rebecca went home completely distraught. Zoe's words echoed in her mind. "You threw my grandmother out of your house, called her a thief." She didn't remember the details of Ms. Dorothy's departure. At the time, Rebecca was living abroad, getting her MBA. She only found out the housekeeper had stopped working there when she returned to the United States. She needed to find out what had happened. She called her mother, who lived in a retirement home. "Mom, do you remember Miss Dorothy, who worked at our house?" "Dorothy? Of course I remember. Why are you asking about her? What happened to her? Why did she stop working there?" On the other end of the line, her mother was silent for a moment. "Oh, Rebecca, that was so long ago. I don't like remembering that story. Mom, it's important. Please tell me. Well, your brother Brandon noticed things were going missing from the house. Food from the fridge, cleaning supplies, sometimes even money from the kitchen drawer. And you accused Miss Dorothy? It wasn't like that. Brandon kept watching and, well, he saw her leaving with bags. When he confronted her, she couldn't explain it properly. Rebecca's stomach twisted. And then? Your brother said he couldn't keep an employee he didn't trust. He let Dorothy go that same week. But were you sure she was stealing? Rebecca, why are you digging up this old story? It happened. It's over. Mom, I met her granddaughter, a girl living alone on the streets after her grandmother passed away. Oh my God, her little granddaughter. How sad. Dorothy always talked about that girl. So, you knew she had a granddaughter? Of course. She raised the girl alone because her daughter had problems. Dorothy was always worried about the child's future. Rebecca hung up the phone and immediately called her brother Brandon. Brand, I need to talk to you about Ms. Dorothy. The employee who was stealing, what about her? Are you sure she was stealing? Rebecca, I saw it with my own eyes. She'd leave with bags full of our things. But did you ask what it was? Did you give her a chance to explain? Of course I asked. She started stuttering, didn't know what to say. A clear sign of guilt. Brand, maybe there was an explanation. Maybe she was taking leftovers for her granddaughter. Leftovers? Rebecca, fresh food, expensive items, even money went missing. Did you see her take money? Brandon fell silent. Well, not exactly. But money disappeared only when she was home alone. That's not proof, Brand. It could have been anyone. The doorman, the gardener, even visitors. Rebecca, why are you defending her? The woman's already dead, from what I heard. Because her granddaughter is living on the streets, and she saved me from an accident. That girl saved my life, Brand. What does that have to do with what happened years ago? Everything. If you all humiliated her grandmother unfairly, we owe that child a debt. Listen, Rebecca, I did what I thought was right at the time. I'm not going to beat myself up over an employee who... Who what, Brand? Who worked faithfully in our home for 15 years? Who took care of everything when our parents traveled? Who knew our routines better than we did? Rebecca, you're being too emotional. You weren't even here when it happened. Exactly. I wasn't here to defend an innocent woman, but I'm here now to protect her granddaughter. Rebecca hung up, frustrated. It was clear Brandon wouldn't admit he might have made a mistake. In the following days, she returned to the traffic lights in the area looking for Zoe, but the girl had vanished again. This time, Rebecca knew it would be much harder to find her. Zoe now had reasons to hide. She decided to change her strategy. Instead of searching for Zoe, she began digging deeper into Ms. Dorothy's past. She spoke to neighbors in the homeless encampment where Zoe lived. Many remembered Ms. Dorothy and spoke of her fondly. Ms. Dorothy was a saint, said one woman, always helped those in need. When we heard she had trouble at work, we were all heartbroken. What kind of trouble? She never said much, but she told us they accused her of something she didn't do. It really shook her. She even fell into depression after that. And her granddaughter? Oh, Zoe. Ms. Dorothy loved that girl more than anything. After she lost her job, she started cleaning houses to support them both, worked much harder than before, and earned far less. Rebecca felt guilt growing inside her. If Ms. Dorothy had been fired unfairly, the Thompson family was responsible for the suffering that followed. She decided to track down others who'd worked for the family at the time. She managed to contact Mr. George, the former doorman. Mr. George, do you remember Ms. Dorothy? How could I forget? The most honest woman I ever knew. When I heard they let her go for stealing, I was outraged. Do you believe she was stealing? Never. Ms. Dorothy wouldn't take $1 that wasn't hers. I saw her leaving with those bags Mr. Brandon got suspicious about. What was in the bags? Leftover food that would have spoiled, party extras, things that were going to waste anyway. She always asked the employer's permission before taking anything. And my mother gave permission. Always. Your mother liked Ms. Dorothy, even said she could take whatever would go bad. But seems Mr. Brandon didn't know that. Rebecca felt her blood boil. Brandon had let Miss Dorothy go without even talking to his own mother about the bags. "Mr. George, do you remember if money really went missing?" "Well, Mrs. Rebecca, I don't like to speak ill of anyone, but there were other people who had access to the house. The new gardener who started around that time, for example. I always thought he was a bit suspicious." "What gardener?" "A young man your brother hired. He only stayed a few months, left right after Miss Dorothy was gone. Strange coincidence, huh?" Rebecca was starting to piece together a clear picture of what had happened. Brandon had accused the wrong person and never bothered to investigate properly. She needed to find Zoe and tell her the whole truth. But where could the girl be? She decided to look in shelters and organizations that helped homeless children. At the third place she visited, a social worker recognized her. "Zoe. Of course I know her. She's been here a few times but never stays long." "Is she here now?" "No. She ran away 2 weeks ago. Said she didn't trust adults anymore. She was really upset about something." "Do you know where she might be?" "Zoe knows the streets well. She could be anywhere. But if I were looking, I'd start at the Central Public Library." "The library?" "She loves to read. Whenever she disappears, she usually ends up there. Stays until closing time, reading or doing schoolwork she assigns herself." Rebecca went straight to the Los Angeles Central Library. She searched every section but didn't find Zoe. She talked to the employees who confirmed they knew the girl. "She comes here almost every day," said the librarian. "She's a very smart child, reads books way beyond her age level." "Have you seen her recently?" "Not this week, but she always shows up." Rebecca decided to wait. She stayed at the library from 2 in the afternoon until closing, but Zoe didn't appear. The next day she repeated the strategy. This time she arrived when the library opened and stayed all day. At 4 in the afternoon she finally saw her. Zoe walked through the main door and headed to the children's section. She was thinner than before, and her clothes were even more worn out. Rebecca waited for her to settle with a book before approaching. "Zoe." The girl looked up and immediately stood ready to run. "Wait, please. I found out the truth about your grandmother." Zoe hesitated but didn't run. "What truth?" "Your grandmother wasn't stealing. She took leftovers with my mother's permission. My brother accused her unfairly." "I already knew that," Zoe said bitterly. "My grandmother told me everything before she passed." "Then why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because it wouldn't change anything. You rich people never admit your mistakes. You'd rather blame the poor." "Zoe, I admit it. My family made a terrible mistake. We humiliated an innocent, honest woman. And what does that change now? My grandmother died suffering, thinking people believed she was a thief." Zoe's words cut deep into Rebecca's heart. "It doesn't change the past, but it can change the future. Your future. I don't want anything from you. Not charity, not pity." "What if it's not charity? What if it's justice?" Zoe looked at her curiously. "What do you mean?" "Your grandmother worked 15 years in our home. She was fired unfairly, without notice, without labor rights. We owe her, and now we owe you. My grandmother never wanted to sue you, even when the neighbors said she should." "Why didn't she sue?" "Because she said holding on to anger only hurts the one who holds it. She chose to forgive and move on." Rebecca felt tears in her eyes. Miss Dorothy had been wronged and still found the strength to forgive. "Your grandmother was an extraordinary person." "She was, and I promised her I'd never accept help from your family, that I'd make it on my own." "But she said that when she was hurt. Do you think she would want to know you're struggling when there's a way to change that?" Zoe fell silent, thinking. "She always said I should study. That education was the only thing no one could take from me." "Then let me pay for your studies. Not as charity, but as repayment of a debt we owe your grandmother. And then you'll want me to live in your house to be grateful, to bow my head and say you're good people?" "No. You can keep living wherever you want, however you want. I just want to make sure you have the opportunities your grandmother wanted for you." Zoe looked at the book in her hands, then at Rebecca. "I need to think." "Of course. You don't have to decide now. But Zoe, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." Why did you save me at the river? If your grandmother had told you about our family, why risk your life for me? Zoe took a long time to answer. Because my grandma always said, we can't let the wrong done to us turn our hearts to stone. She said we should help those in need even if they're our enemy. Your grandmother really was a special person. She was. And I don't want to disappoint her. Not in life, nor in wherever she is now. Rebecca realized she had touched on something central to Zoe. The girl didn't just want to survive, she wanted to honor her grandmother's memory. Can I suggest something? Rebecca said. What if I help you for just 1 week? Only a week. If you don't like it, if you're uncomfortable, I'll stop and never bother you again. Zoe thought for a long moment. Just 1 week? Just 1 week. And you stay living where you are now. I'll only cover some basics. Food, clothes, school supplies. And then? Then you decide if you want to continue or not. Zoe closed the book and looked straight into Rebecca's eyes. Why is this so important to you? Because you saved my life, because your grandmother was wronged by my family, and because I admire your strength, Zoe. I admire how you haven't let everything you've been through break you. Sometimes I feel broken, Zoe confessed quietly. But you're not. You're here, studying, fighting, dreaming. That's strength. Zoe took a deep breath. Okay, 1 week. But if I don't like something, it's over. Deal. They stood up and walked out of the library together. Rebecca felt a mix of relief and anxiety. She had gotten the chance she wanted, but she knew it was just the beginning of a very delicate process. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, on the first official day of their agreement, Rebecca took Zoe shopping for clothes. The girl was visibly uncomfortable at the mall, looking around as if expecting someone to kick her out. Choose whatever you like, Rebecca said. I don't know how to pick these things, Zoe admitted. My grandma used to buy my clothes at the church thrift shop. Then let's figure out what you like together. They spent the afternoon trying on clothes, and Rebecca noticed small details about Zoe. She liked muted colors, preferred pants over dresses, and had a surprisingly refined taste for someone who'd never had new clothes before. How do you know these colors match? Rebecca asked. My grandma taught me. She said it doesn't matter if clothes are expensive or cheap. What matters is staying clean and matching. Your grandmother taught you a lot. She taught me everything I know. When they left the mall, Zoe carried 3 bags of basic clothing. It was the first time Rebecca had seen her truly smile. Thank you, Zoe said shyly. You're welcome. Now let's pick a school. Zoe's smile faded. School? Of course, you need to study. I study on my own. I don't need school. Zoe, you're very smart, but you need a formal education. You need diplomas, certificates. I don't like being around a lot of people, and kids my age always laugh at me. Why? Because I know things they don't, and I don't know things they do. Because my life is different. Rebecca realized the school issue would be more complicated than she'd imagined. What about online learning? You can study at home and take exams in person. That exists? It does. And at your age, you can do an accelerated middle school program and then move on to high school. Zoe's eyes lit up. Really? Really? Want to try? I do. In the following days, Rebecca helped Zoe enroll in an online education system. She bought her a laptop, books, and school supplies. Zoe absorbed everything with an impressive thirst for knowledge. You learn so fast, Rebecca remarked one afternoon. My grandma always said I was smart. She told me I could be anything I wanted when I grew up. And what do you want to be? Zoe thought for a moment. A lawyer. A lawyer? Why? To defend people like my grandma. Poor people who get accused unfairly because they can't afford to defend themselves. The answer moved Rebecca deeply. Zoe had turned her pain into purpose. It's a wonderful profession, and you'll be an excellent lawyer. You think so? I'm sure of it. You already have the most important quality, the courage to fight for what's right. The week passed quickly. Zoe looked visibly healthier, more confident. She still lived in the shack, but now she had regular meals, clean clothes, and the chance to study properly. On the last day of the trial week, Rebecca visited her. "So, want to keep our partnership going?" Zoe looked at the books scattered around her shack, at the laptop that had transformed her study routine. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why don't you give up on me? I'm difficult, distrustful, stubborn." "Because you remind me of someone." "Who?" "Myself when I was little. I was stubborn and distrustful too. I also thought I could do everything alone." "Did it work?" "It did. But it would have been much easier if I'd accepted help when it was offered with genuine care." Zoe smiled. "Okay, let's keep going, but I have conditions." "What conditions?" "First, I keep living here. This is my place, at least for now." "Agreed." "Second, you can't try to control me. I make my own decisions." "Agreed." "Third, if I find out you're doing this to ease your family's conscience, I walk away and never speak to you again." "Zoe, I'm doing this because I admire you and because I want you to have the opportunities you deserve. And fourth, I want to know more about my grandma, about the time she worked in your house, about the good things that happened there. She hardly talked about it after she was let go." "Of course, I'll tell you everything I know." And so began a new chapter in both their lives. Rebecca started visiting Zoe regularly, not just to check on her, but because she genuinely enjoyed the girl's company. Zoe had strong opinions about everything, asked smart questions, and saw the world in a unique way. She wasn't impressed by wealth or status, but valued honesty and loyalty above all. 3 months later, Zoe had already completed 2 years of middle school through accelerated studies. Her online teachers were amazed by her dedication and intelligence. "Zoe, can I make a suggestion?" Rebecca said one afternoon. "Go ahead. How about coming over for lunch at my house on Sunday? I want to show you some photos of your grandmother that I found." Zoe hesitated. She still hadn't stepped foot in the Thompson family's home since discovering who Rebecca was. "Are there other people there?" "No, just me. I've lived alone since my divorce." "You were married?" "I was. But my ex-husband didn't like me getting involved in social causes. Said it was a waste of time." "And you left him because of that?" "Among other things. I realized we married thinking we were alike, but we were actually very different. He only cared about money and status. I wanted something more meaningful in life." "Like helping stubborn girls who sell water at the traffic light?" Rebecca laughed. "Exactly." On Sunday, Zoe showed up at Rebecca's house wearing one of her new outfits. She was visibly nervous. The house was large and elegant, but Rebecca had made sure it felt welcoming. There were plants everywhere, books scattered around, photos from travels. "Your house is beautiful," Zoe said, looking around. "Thank you. Would you like to see the photos of your grandmother?" Zoe nodded. Rebecca brought out a family photo album. "Here," she said, pointing to a picture. "Your grandmother at my mother's birthday party." Zoe took the album and studied it carefully. In the photo, Miss Dorothy was in the background, but she was smiling. She wore a simple blue dress and had her hair in the bun Zoe had described. "She's smiling," Zoe observed, moved. "Your grandmother smiled a lot. She was a joyful person, from what I remember. After she was let go, she rarely smiled. She became very sad." They spent the afternoon looking through photos. In many of them, Ms. Dorothy appeared in the background, always working, always discreet, but Rebecca pointed out small details that showed how respected she was. "See this photo," Rebecca said. "It's from Christmas. Your grandmother is sitting at the table with the family. My mother always insisted that the employees join us for dinner. My grandmother used to tell me about the Christmases at your house. She loved them. And here," Rebecca continued, "your grandmother is holding my baby nephew. My sister-in-law trusted her completely." Zoe touched the photo gently. She adored children. She always said being a grandmother was the most important thing in her life. "I'm sure she'd be very proud of you now, seeing how you're studying, how dedicated you are." "Sometimes I dream about her," Zoe confessed. "In the dreams, she's always encouraging me to study, to not give up." "What do you think she'd say about our friendship?" Zoe thought for a moment. I think she'd be happy. She always said the world gets better when people from different classes respect and help each other. After lunch, Rebecca showed Zoe the rest of the house. When they reached the office, Zoe was fascinated by the number of books. Have you read all of these? Most of them. I love reading. Can I borrow some? Of course. Take as many as you'd like. Zoe spent the rest of the afternoon picking out books. Her selection surprised Rebecca. Philosophy, history, law, classic literature. Are you sure you want to read Ernest Hemingway? Rebecca asked. Yes. My grandmother always said he was the greatest American writer. She read his books at the library and told me the stories. Your grandmother read Ernest Hemingway? She read everything she could. She said even without much schooling she could learn by reading. That's how she taught me English, math, history. Rebecca was increasingly impressed with Miss Dorothy. Beyond being honest and hardworking, she was a cultured, intelligent woman. Zoe, can I ask you a personal question? Go ahead. Do you resent my family? I'd understand if you did. Zoe thought carefully before answering. At first I did. When my grandmother cried in secret, when we had to move to a smaller place, when she got sick from working so much in different houses, I felt a lot of anger. And now? Not now. Anger hurts the one who feels it, not the one who caused the problem. My grandmother taught me that. She really was wise. She was. And she taught me something even more important. What? That people can change. That we can choose to be better than our mistakes. Rebecca felt tears in her eyes. Thank you for giving me the chance to be better. Thank you for helping me honor my grandmother's memory. 6 months later, Zoe's life had completely changed. She still lived in the shack, but now she had everything she needed to study. She was about to finish middle school and was already planning for high school. Rebecca and Zoe saw each other several times a week. They had developed a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and affection. It was during one of these visits that Zoe asked a question that surprised Rebecca. Rebecca, can I meet your brother? Brandon? Why? Because I need to make peace with the past. I can't carry resentment forever. Zoe, you don't have to do this. What happened wasn't your fault. I know, but if I'm going to be a lawyer, I need to learn to separate the person from the mistake they made. Your brother was wrong, but that doesn't mean he's a bad person. Rebecca was impressed by Zoe's maturity. Are you sure? I am. My grandmother always said forgiveness sets the one who forgives free. I want to be completely free. Rebecca spoke to Brandon, who at first resisted the idea of meeting Zoe. Why stir this up now? He said. It's all settled. Brand, it's not settled. You accused an innocent woman and you need to own up to that. And what do you want me to do? Humiliate myself in front of some street girl? I want you to be man enough to admit a mistake. After much insistence, Brandon agreed to meet Zoe. The meeting took place at Rebecca's house on a Saturday afternoon. Brandon was visibly uncomfortable when Zoe arrived. She, on the other hand, seemed calm and determined. You're Dorothy's granddaughter, he said, unsure how to start the conversation. I am, and you're the one who accused my grandmother of stealing. Zoe, Rebecca began, worried about the girl's bluntness. It's okay, Rebecca. I came here to talk about this. Brandon shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Look, girl, I did what I thought was right at the time. Mr. Brandon, Zoe interrupted respectfully. Can I ask you something? Did you really believe my grandmother was stealing, or was it just easier to blame her? The question caught Brandon off guard. What do you mean? Did you investigate other possibilities? Did you talk to other people who had access to the house? Or did you just assume the housekeeper was guilty? Brandon was silent for a long moment. I saw her leaving with bags. Trash bags, Mr. Brandon. Leftover food that was going to spoil with your mother's permission. I didn't know that at the time. Did you ask? Did you talk to your mother before accusing my grandmother? Again, Brandon had no answer. No, he finally admitted. Why? Because I assumed I knew what was happening. And why did you assume a woman who had worked in your house for 15 years without ever causing trouble would suddenly become a thief? Brandon lowered his eyes. I didn't think about that. Or did you think a poor housekeeper would naturally be a suspect? Zoe's words cut deep. Brandon finally understood what he had done. You're right, he said quietly. I judged your grandmother out of prejudice. I assumed she was guilty because she was poor and a housekeeper. And what did that do to her life? I imagine it was hard. It wasn't hard, Mr. Brandon. It was devastating. My grandmother spent 2 years thinking people believed she was a thief. She was depressed, lost weight, cried every night. And she had to work 3 times as hard to earn half of what she made here. Brandon was visibly shaken. I'm so sorry, truly. I believe you are. But feeling sorry isn't enough. What do you want from me? I want you to learn from this mistake, to never judge someone without investigating properly again, to never let prejudice guide your decisions. And, do you forgive me? Zoe looked at him for a long moment. Mr. Brandon, forgiveness isn't something you ask for. It's something you earn through real change. If you've truly changed, then yes, I can forgive you. How can I prove I've changed? By being a better person from now on, treating your employees well, giving opportunities to people in need, honoring my grandmother's memory by being fair to others like her. Brandon nodded, emotional. Can I do something for your grandmother now? What? I can pay for a proper headstone for her grave, and I can write a letter explaining what really happened in case you need it in the future. Zoe smiled for the first time since the conversation began. That would be very kind. My grandmother deserves to be remembered with dignity. After Brandon left, Rebecca looked at Zoe with admiration. How were you able to be so mature with him? My grandmother taught me that revenge only brings more pain, but justice brings peace. And did you get justice? I got something better. I made him understand his mistake and commit to not repeating it. That might help others in the future. 2 years passed. Zoe had graduated high school with excellent grades and was preparing for the college entrance exam for law. She still lived in the same place but now planned to move closer to college. Rebecca had become more than a benefactor. She was like an older aunt, a confidant, a friend. Zoe, can I make a proposal? Rebecca said one afternoon. Sure. How about you come live with me during college? It would make studying easier and I'd love your company. Zoe thought for a moment. Can I make a counteroffer? Of course. How about I rent the annex of your house? I'd pay a symbolic rent, keep my independence, but stay close. You want to pay rent? I do. I'm already making some money tutoring neighborhood kids in English. It's not much, but it covers rent. Rebecca smiled. Zoe would never lose her independence or pride. Deal. But Sunday dinners are mandatory at the main house. Deal. On moving day, several people from the encampment came to say goodbye to Zoe. She had become a leader in the community, helping other kids with their studies and advising families on labor rights. Don't forget about us when you're rich and famous, joked Mrs. Betty, a neighbor. Never. And when I graduate, I'll open an office right here in the neighborhood to help everyone. For free? Someone asked. Those who can pay will. Those who can't will still get help. During the high school graduation ceremony, Zoe gave a speech as the class representative. She spoke about overcoming challenges, the importance of education, and how a person can change their life through learning. In the audience, Rebecca cried with emotion. Brandon was also there, keeping his promise to support Zoe in her achievements. After the ceremony, they went out to dinner to celebrate. Where are we going now? Rebecca asked. To the cemetery, Zoe replied. I want to tell my grandmother I finished high school. At the cemetery, Zoe placed flowers on Miss Dorothy's grave, which now had a beautiful headstone paid for by Brandon. Grandma, I did it, she said, kneeling by the grave. I'm going to study law. I'll be a lawyer, and I'll help so many people just like you always wanted. Rebecca and Brandon stood a little apart, respecting Zoe's private moment. Rebecca, Brandon said quietly, thank you for showing me who this girl really is. Why? Because she taught me that a person's character has nothing to do with their financial situation. Miss Dorothy raised an extraordinary girl. Yes, she did. And you helped her realize the potential she already had. Actually, Brand, I think it was the other way around. She helped me become a better person. When Zoe stood up, there were tears in her eyes, but also a radiant smile. Ready? Rebecca asked. Ready. Now let's celebrate for real. They went to dinner at a nice restaurant, and for the first time since they'd met, Zoe seemed completely relaxed. They talked about college plans, future dreams, and how life can take unexpected turns. Zoe, Rebecca said during dessert, have you thought about which area of law you want to specialize in? Labor law. I want to defend housekeepers, farm workers, people who don't have a voice. Just like your grandmother. Just like my grandmother. She taught me that our purpose in life is to help those who need it most. I'm sure you'll be an amazing lawyer. And I'm sure I'll never forget who helped me when I needed it most. Brandon, who had been quiet for most of the dinner, finally spoke. Zoe, can I say something? Go ahead. Your grandmother raised an exceptional person, and I'm grateful you gave me the chance to meet that person. Thank you, Mr. Brandon. That means a lot to me. And can I ask you a question? Of course. How did you manage not to hold a grudge? How did you forgive? Zoe thought for a moment. My grandmother always said that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. She taught me that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, but it means not letting bitterness control our lives. Your grandmother was very wise. She was. And she taught me that the best things in life come when we least expect them. Like our friendship, she said, looking at Rebecca. Who would have thought the granddaughter of the dismissed employee would become friends with the employer's daughter? Life has its ironies, Rebecca agreed. It's not irony, Zoe said. It's justice. Divine justice, my grandmother would say. 5 years later, Zoe was graduating from law school. She had been the top student in her class and already had several job offers from prestigious firms. But she had decided to stick to her original plan, opening an office in the neighborhood where she grew up, offering affordable legal services to the community. Zoe, are you sure about this? Rebecca asked. You could make a lot more money at a big firm. Rebecca, money isn't everything. It isn't. My grandmother taught me that true wealth lies in making a difference in people's lives. But you need to support yourself too. And I will. I already have several clients waiting. Plus, I'll teach law classes at night to supplement my income. On the day of Zoe's office opening, half the neighborhood was there. Rebecca and Brandon were also present, proud of the young woman they'd watched grow up. The office was small but welcoming. Zoe had decorated it with photos of her grandmother and inspirational quotes about justice and equality. Ms. Zoe, said an elderly woman from the community, are you really going to help us? Of course, Mrs. Mary. That's why I'm here. And how much will you charge? It depends on the case. Those who can pay the standard rate will. Those who can pay less will. Those who can't pay at all will still get help. But how will you support yourself like this? Mrs. Mary, my grandmother taught me that when we help others, life always finds a way to take care of us too. During the opening celebration, Zoe gave a short speech. I want to thank everyone here today. This office isn't just mine, it's ours. It's a place where everyone can seek justice, no matter their financial situation. And I also want to especially thank two people, Rebecca Thompson, who gave me the opportunity to study and became my family in heart, and Brandon Thompson, who taught me that people can change and become better. But most of all, I want to dedicate this moment to the memory of my grandmother, Dorothy Williams, a woman who taught me that dignity isn't bought, it's earned, who showed me that we can choose to be better than our circumstances. This office exists to honor her memory and to continue the work she started, caring for those who need it most. Everyone applauded, and many were moved. It was clear Zoe had deeply touched the community. After the celebration, when only Rebecca and Brandon remained, Zoe called them aside for a private conversation. I want to talk about something important with you both, she said. What is it? Asked Rebecca. You two are my family now, not by blood, but by choice. And I want you to know that means everything to me. To us too, Rebecca said, emotional. And Brandon, I want you to know I've completely forgiven you. You've become a better man, and that honors my grandmother's memory. Thank you, Zoe, that means more than you know. And now, Zoe continued, I want to make a proposal. What proposal? Rebecca asked. How about we have Sunday lunch together every week? A family tradition. I'd love that, said Rebecca. Me too, Brandon agreed. Great. And there's one more thing. What? Every year, on the anniversary of my grandmother's passing, I want us to visit her grave together, to thank her for everything she taught us. Of course, they both said. And to tell her about the people we've helped that year. I'm sure she'd be proud to know her story inspired others to be better. 10 years later, Zoe had become one of the most respected lawyers in the region. Her office had grown and now served many underprivileged communities in Los Angeles. She had also founded a charity in her grandmother's name, offering scholarships to low-income youth and vocational courses for housekeepers. Rebecca remained her closest friend and supporter. She had remarried, this time to a man who shared her values of social justice. Brandon had completely transformed as a businessman. He'd created an exemplary benefits program for his employees and become one of the main financial backers of Zoe's foundation. Zoe, Rebecca said during a Sunday lunch, have you ever thought of running for public office? You could help even more people. I've considered it, but for now, I prefer to keep doing what I do, changing lives one at a time, just like your grandmother did. Just like my grandmother did. And how do you feel now looking back? Brandon asked. Grateful. Grateful for every experience, even the hard ones, because they shaped me. And if you could change anything? Zoe thought for a long moment. I'd spare my grandmother her suffering. I wish she'd lived to see her sacrifice was worth it. I'm sure she knows, Rebecca said. Wherever she is. I think so too. Sometimes I still dream of her, and in those dreams she's always smiling. What does she say to you in the dreams? That she's proud, and to keep helping people the way she did. You do that every day. And I plan to for the rest of my life. That afternoon, after lunch, they visited Miss Dorothy's grave. It was a tradition they'd kept faithfully for years. Grandma, Zoe said, placing fresh flowers on the headstone. Another year has passed, and so much good has happened. This year we helped 250 families resolve labor issues. We got 30 young people into college through the foundation, and over 100 housekeepers took our labor rights courses. But most of all, Grandma, we're still a family you built through love and forgiveness. Rebecca and Brandon stayed silent, respecting Zoe's moment with her grandmother. And you know what else, Grandma? Zoe continued. I realized that day at the river wasn't a coincidence. It was you who gave me the courage to save Rebecca, because you knew it would change our lives for the better. You always said everything happens for a reason, and now I understand what that reason was. When they stood up to leave, Zoe was beaming. Ready? Rebecca asked. Ready. Let's go home. And so they walked to the car together, an improvised but real family, united by the memory of an extraordinary woman who had taught them that love and forgiveness are stronger than any resentment. The story of Zoe, Rebecca, and Brandon would continue for many years, always honoring Ms. Dorothy's lessons, that people can change, that forgiveness sets you free, and that true wealth lies in making a difference in others' lives. The end. Tell us what you thought of this story and where you're following us from. If you have something to share, leave us an honest comment. Do you think Zoe made the right choice by forgiving? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartfelt stories.